Okay, today we continue our journey through architecture with two presentations about two architects connected with the date of April 11th, because today is April 11th. First, Donato Bramante, born in 1444 and died in 1514. Let's read a little bit about him. So Donato Bramante, born as Donato di Pascuccio d'Antonio and also known as Bramante Lazzari, was an Italian architect and painter. He introduced Renaissance architecture to Milan and the High Renaissance style to Rome, where his plan for St. Peter's Basilica formed the basis of design executed by Michelangelo. His Tempietto in San Pietro in Montorio marked the beginning of the High Renaissance in Rome, 1502, and it is a beautiful building. When Pope Julius II appointed him to build a sanctuary over the spot where Peter was martyred. So Donato Bramante, truly a force in architecture and in the culture of the Renaissance, Italian Renaissance. This is maybe not a very flattering engraving, which was certainly done after he died, as sometimes happens with these, engravings. Another portrait of him, but who knows how he looked like. Was he like this? I don't know. Anyway, drawings by Donato Bramante. We have some surviving drawings. He was a very special architect who initiated, in a way, the struggles for St. Peter's, new, basilica, because there was one prior to him. I mean, a long time ago. We are going to see the plans submitted and the ones that finally made the building possible. Some paintings by Bramante, because he was also a painter. Christ at the Column, 1490. Very interesting painting, actually. With I'm almost in dismay when I look at the body of Christ. There's a certain level of modernity about it, almost not right, I would say, but I shouldn't talk like this, not right. It's just that it's not how you would expect Christ to look like, on the cross. Just a second, sorry. So at that time, most architects were also artists, sculptors, painters, sometimes they wrote like Alberti, but I don't think at that time in the Renaissance, the architects were accountants or, money speculators, that is businessmen. No, I mean, you could say I'm idealizing the architects at that time. Yes, I am probably, but I'm happy to do so. And I see what they were doing. They were doing paintings, they were doing sculptures, and they were doing architecture. Santa Maria presso San Tiro in Milan. So we are at the end of the 15th century. I like Bramante because there is a certain austerity in his work and a sense of balance that I admire very much. So again, how is this called? Just a second. Let's go here. Santa Maria presso San Tiro. Many buildings, of course, destined to Santa Maria, properly so. So this is in Milan, not in Rome. He also built in Rome. Donato Bramante. You will say the logic of construction is amazing for a painter, and it is. And you will see also the plan he submitted for San Pietro, equally, rigorous and balanced. Santa Maria delle Grazie, the cloister, though an apse, he didn't design the whole building. Also in Milan, at the end of the 15th century. So this is the entrance at west, but he designed what it happens at the east, the apse and the cloister. We are going to see, this is the cloister. Although I'm a little bit confused, and it's possible the images might be a little bit not properly chosen, because he also built a cloister in Rome, and we are going to see it very similar to this one. This is the apse, the eastern facade of this church in Milan. So he designed this, the apse. Now, the Tempietto, in my opinion, his best building, and it is a beautiful building, and Palladio loved it too, since he made drawings of Il Tempietto, very, very nice drawings, which are shown in the 4 books of architecture that Palladio published. The Tempietto in San Pietro in Montorio is a church there, and he built in the courtyard this small temple. This is the drawing of Palladio. And I love this drawing. Once I even made a project myself for a competition in Japan. I just placed on a little pedestal here in the center the beginning of the world by Brâncuș. You know, it was a competition for a sculpture museum. So, you know, I just had this idea to place inside Il Tempietto by Bramante the beginning of the world by Brâncuș. That's it. But the drawing, as I said, belongs to Andrea Palladio, and it's a beautiful drawing. As Palladio often did, he would divide the building symmetrically into half section, half elevation. And this is a rendering of Il Tempietto. We are going to see many pictures. This is not by Palladio, but was probably copied after Palladio. And this is the building. So apparently St. Peter was martyred here on this spot, and that's where the church decided to build Il Tempietto. And Bramante did the job, and I think he did a brilliant job. These are both drawings are by Andrea Palladio, the plan and the half section, half elevation. It's interesting, the plan, because you know, it's from the outside or from the section you imagine it's actually a cylinder, but the room itself, the space, is actually a rotated square, which with an obliquely insinuated octagon. So I like this fact that you know, it's the square becomes an octagon and becomes a circle, and even if these things do not happen literally, but through the workings of the imagination. But from the outside, you would say this is a round building. This is in fact, I should not have shown this illustration. It doesn't be, yes, it's done by who knows who, you know, in more recent times. You can tell from the writing. But what this shows is something that I didn't see in other drawing, is that there is a crypt or something underneath underneath the temple as you see it from the outside. And that was the reason I chose to show it, because this section is different from most other sections I saw with the building. Palladio doesn't show what happens here. If you are in Rome, I hope you will not forget to visit it. It's not difficult to find it. Although if you don't know it is there, and if you don't know what you search for, you might pass by it because it's inside the courtyard of the cloister. I hope I have an image from the outside. You see here. So, you know, you could pass by San Pietro in Montorio and not know that inside the courtyard is the beautiful Il Tempietto by Donato Bramante. You have to climb these stairs and then go inside, and there it is. It's a jewel, if I am to use such a prosaic word for in relation with the temple. Donato Bramante. Il Tempietto. And the drawing, I think this was by him. Santa Maria della Pace. He didn't do the whole building. He didn't do the elevation of the building, which is a very important architectural achievement. It belongs to Pietro da Cortona. But at Santa Maria della Pace, Bramante did the cloister from 1504. So it's very similar to the one in Milan. I am not sure I chose the correct pictures for the one in Milan. In plan, this is what it is. He did the cloister here. That's where Bramante worked. Santa Maria della Pace is a very important building for the Baroque architecture of Rome, and the facade and this architectural configuration belongs to one of the greatest Baroque architects, Pietro da Cortona. So here we have Pietro da Cortona. I don't know who did the whole building. Pietro da Cortona didn't do the whole building either. He just worked for the elevation, the western facade, and Bramante, the courtyard of the cloister, maybe the cloister itself. So he did this part, Bramante. I don't know about this, these are done later on, these studies of, idealizations of geometry. It's possible that Bramante used them, but I don't know. So the cloister in Rome. I regret I don't have pictures of it's a very important church for the Baroque Roman architecture, but I suggest if you are interested to search for it, Santa Maria della Pace, and you'll see plenty of pictures, because here indeed Pietro da Cortona did a great job with a dynamic interplay between what is convex and what is concave. Now, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Bramante's design from 1503. The groundbreaking took place in 1506, but it took place based on the plans of Michelangelo Buonarroti. But Michelangelo didn't distance himself dramatically from Bramante's scheme. This is what Bramante proposed for St. Peter. It was not built quite like this. It was built on the plans of Michelangelo. But as I said, Michelangelo still connected with what Bramante did. There were other plans, and I hope I have them here. Yes, there was the old St. Peter's from the 4th century. Bramante proposed this in 1506. So more than 1,000 years later, Bramante proposed this plan. Then Michelangelo proposed this, and you see they are very similar. I mean, there are some differences, but there are also similarities. In the end, Carlo Maderno, he lengthened the nave, and now the facade of the building is here. So Michelangelo didn't propose this. This belonged to Maderno from 1607. So, you know, from 1506 to 1607, 100 years passed since Bramante proposed this, and Maderno finalized the building with the intermediate effort of Michelangelo, who also designed the very impressive dome above this. So, and here we see, you know, other contributions to, you know, planning. San Pietro, Raphael proposed this, then Peruzzi, then Sangallo, and then Michelangelo. Maderno is not shown here. That is, you know, the final design that was implemented. Cortile del Belvedere in Vatican City in Rome, 1506, also done by Donato Bramante, but I'm not sure there are two actually. As you can see, it's one here and one here, and I don't know if he designed both or just one of them. And if one of them, I don't know which one. I should study more. Anyway, cars at the Vatican, and you see here in the plan, you know, the two, the Cortile Superiore and Cortile Inferiore. Maybe he designed both or just one of them, but anyway, this is what it is. Apparently he was, you know, given such commissions, you know, with the courtyards of cloisters, and here with this Cortile at the Vatican. As you can see in section, the two spaces, this one and this one, but there is a difference in section as well. You know, this is a taller building, and you know, the ground floor is at a much lower level. Rome. Palazzo Caprini, also known as Raphael's house. Raphael, although he died at 37, I have to say that he was a very accomplished artist and even architect, and he was doing well. In fact, he was planning to build a huge palace for himself. I think it was his house in Palazzo Caprini, which was designed by Bramante, but demolished in the 17th century. And we only have, you know, such renderings of it. Of course, in the 17th century, there were no photographers on the face of the earth. Now, obviously, you know, Rome at that time valued, and not just Rome, the great artists and the great architects were very valued. If a young painter, you know, like Raphael, yes, a painter of genius and an architect, lived like this, you know, you can imagine. I don't think we can easily say something similar these days. There are many, many artists and poets and very capable people who live in the gutter, not in palaces designed by Bramante. And this is another later day rendering of this building, Raffaello's palace, designed by Bramante, demolished in the 17th century. In addition to building, Bramante wrote about architecture and composed 80 sonnets. Not bad. Not bad at all. Maybe we should have again architects who write sonnets in addition to building and in addition to writing about architecture. So he died on April 11th. So now we go to the second architect who also died on April 11th, and that's the reason we talk about him today, a German architect from the 19th century, Constantin Lipsius, 1832, 1894. This was the man. And let's read a little bit about him. Johannes Wilhelm Constantin Lipsius was born in October 1832, but died on April 11th, 1894. Was a German architect and architectural theorist, best known for his controversial design of the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, an exhibition building, 1883-1894, on the Brühl Terrace in Dresden, today known as the Lipsius Bau. Private commissions for Constantin Lipsius. This is a residence, almost mid-century, a little bit later, 1860, 1861. Where is it? In Leipzig. The building exists. And it's, in good shape, it seems. Constantin Lipsius. Now a castle of some sort. Well, without of some sort. A castle, pure and simple, but rather small, but still a castle. I don't know. Castles are strange, strange buildings. I find them totally anachronistic. I mean, could you imagine today an architect saying, I'm building a castle? How could you build a castle, when above the castle could fly a Russian bomber? Castles were for a different age, a different time, not for our time. It's impossible, or have droners or, I don't know what other inventions by Elon Musk. But in the 19th century, they still built castles. This is another castle in Leipzig. Well, it's called a castle. It's actually a building that reminds me of some building in Australia. Unfortunately, this was, this was located, I hope it still exists, in Leipzig, in former Democratic Republic of Germany. And as you can see, the building in, totally unkept condition. But I imagine its walls are very, very thick. So it endured even years of, indifferent socialism or communism. It's called the Schloss. It's called the castle, but it's a large house by Constantin Lipsius. I actually like it because it reminds me of certain buildings in Transylvania. Also unkept, like this one. And this one also abandoned, probably, and even vandalized. Otherwise, a shiny Mercedes is right there, parked. A mausoleum in Dresden, 1891, 1893, and the mausoleum it is. We don't design mausoleums any longer because we don't care any longer about domus eterna. We only exist for the here and now. Who cares about, the afterlife? There is no afterlife. But the paradox is, I think, that when there is no afterlife, there is no life either. They are correlative, life and death, I think. If one is absent, the other one is absent as well. In the 19th century, architects built a lot of, things, so to speak, in the cemetery. Louis Sullivan did several, and most architects in the 19th century, there was a great interest in what we might call domus eterna, the eternal home. So mausoleum for, I don't know, an important man, so to speak. not an important woman. In fact, you see him on top of the mausoleum, staring down at us, staring down at the postman. You know, did the postman bring a letter to the mausoleum? Public commissions. Now we see larger buildings by Constantin Lipsius, a hospital in Leipzig, 1867, 18, I don't know if they still exist, 1872. I like the fact that there are no cars, like in front of that Schloss, you know, that we just saw in Leipzig. This is a, yeah, I don't think, yeah, it doesn't, I don't think it exists any longer. It's possible that it was ravished in the Second World War. It was ruined. Humans are very good at this, building and then destroying themselves and others. Constantin Lipsius. Now, this is his most known work, the Royal Art Academy and Exhibition Building in Dresden, which still exists, and it's called Lipsius Bau. That's how it is called now. I didn't quite understand why it was controversial. I read that it was controversial, so it's all this building here. You know, it's a major building in Dresden, and you know, it's amazing that it still stands because Dresden was heavily bombed in the Second World War. If it was controversial, this is almost a quality, because often in art, and I include architecture here as well, what is controversial is actually good. Good works often are controversial for some reason. Perhaps we could ask ourselves, why is it so that what is good and enduring in time is initially at least controversial? There are so many great, you know, creations in culture in general that initially they were controversial, and then they became, you know, golden products of human work and imagination and creativity. It's like humanity is changing its mind. Well, it is said that very often that artists, great artists, they are ahead of their time. You know, that's how the saying goes. You know, they are ahead of their time, and being that they are ahead of their time, they are controversial. People throw stones sometimes at works that later on are considered, you know, masterpieces. Cultural diamonds. Constantin Lipsius, building in Dresden. The building now darkened, of course, not just by the passage of time, but also by war, the Second World War. This, I just noticed now, looks rather dramatic here. Well, what's going on here? This giant, I thought for a second it was some kind of a Godzilla, some kind of a, you know, present day installation. It's strange. I can't figure out what it is. It's so big and so black. I mean, compare it with the silhouette of, I don't know, is this Lipsius himself or some king? And the interior today, inviting to the pleasures of life and modern interventions. Dresden should be happy that the building survived the great gifts of the Second World War. Constantin Lipsius, 19th century, Germany. I'm not so sure about these glass domes, as I'm not sure also about what Sir Norman Foster did above the Reichstag in Berlin. Maybe as an expression of some kind of democracy, but a glass dome is a little bit questionable from my point of view, in as much as a glass pyramid, like IMP's pyramid in Paris. Well, glass pyramid to me is almost a contradiction in terms. Anyway, this is how the building looks like inside now. Sacred commissions. We know what that means. A church. This is the church without a roof, and which made me, prepare quickly a presentation about roofless, not ruthless, roofless cathedrals. 1866, 1867, built by Constantin Lipsius. And, without the ivy, without the green, is impressive. But with the green, and you see in a way I don't know what it is. It's an act of love. It is a declaration of love from vegetation on the building, or is the assault of nature on the building, whatever it is. I always like this green on buildings, climbing on the walls, especially if the walls are, welcoming them, if they are made of organic materials like the bricks, like it is the case here. Is this the future? Maybe, if nature refuses to be totally, dwarfed by man. Constantin Lipsius, red and green, brick and ivy. Preservation work, Thomaskirche in Leipzig. I forgot about this. Johann Sebastian Bach is buried in this church. Let's read again. Thomaskirche in Leipzig. And Bach, the great, great, great composer, is buried in this church. In Leipzig. He just restored the building, Constantin Lipsius. But again, we should remember this fact that here is buried Johann Sebastian Bach. Johanneskirche in Gera. What is going on here? Sorry about that picture. Yeah, a very tall church or cathedral church, Kirche, and complex stained glass windows. Sorry about the image. I don't know what happened. Half of it is affected by who knows what. Brick all the way to the spire. Did he design the whole building? I guess Johanneskirche, yes, in Gera. Constantin Lipsius. Now, Louis Kahn said, I asked the brick what it wants to be, and the brick said, I want to be an arch. But maybe if Constantin Lipsius, in this case, would have asked a brick what he wants to be, in his case, maybe the brick would have said, I would want to be a church, or to, move upwards together with the church towards God. Nothing less. I particularly like this image of this church, Johanneskirche, by Constantin Lipsius. In the 19th century, there were remarkable religious buildings built. And the Neo-Gothic had its glory in the 19th century. It was that amazing architect, Pugin, in Great Britain, who died mad at 40. And he built, I think, 40 cathedrals and churches, besides other things, and publishing enormously. He was in love with the Gothic. He was in love with the Neo-Gothic. He could not have imagined a life, or an architecture without as many churches and as many cathedrals as possible. Pugin, truly a man mad because of excessive faith. But could I say something like this? Is almost not that it's unreasonable, it's sacrilegious to talk about excessive faith. Faith has to be total or it isn't. There is no such thing as excessive faith. Although this tall flesh of Constantin Lipsius seems to say that, it wanted to go higher and higher and higher and higher. An old postcard with this church, which is, I think, a good building, a very good building by this German architect, Constantin Lipsius. Another Kirche, Petrikkirche in Leipzig. Look at this one. Nothing wrong with it, if I can say so. But Bach is not, housed in this church, Petrikkirche, but in the previous one that we looked at. Anyway, this one is good too, I would say. It's not so old. It's the 19th century, 160 years ago, or 150 or 170, whatever, not even 200. But when we see cathedrals, Gothic or Gothicist, we think of being them much older. Not necessarily. The building still functions, as you can see, gloriously so. Constantin Lipsius. Darkened the building again, most surely because of the Second World War. Another one, also in Leipzig, and again with an impressive flash and an impressive spire. A mysterious haze inside. And maybe this is his grave. Yes, Constantin Lipsius. He died on the 11th of April. Thank you.